Well, welcome back to The Heat. Russia announced Friday it will seize U.S. diplomatic properties and order the State Department to reduce its staff in Russia. It comes after the U.S. Congress proposed new sanctions against Russia for its alleged meddling in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Let's get back to our panel right now. David, let me get to you. Lots happening in the United States and lots happening in the last few hours, actually. But if we look at what happened in Congress over the past 24 hours, President Trump and the Republican Party suffered something of a major defeat. The efforts to reform or change the country's healthcare laws have collapsed. How big a defeat was this for Trump?
It was fairly catastrophic for Trump. I think it means that he's been in office for more than 6 months with still no major legislation to his name. And, you know, let's remember he styled himself during last year's election campaign as the ultimate deal maker. He also promised to almost immediately repeal and replace Obamacare, and he signally failed. And in fact, in recent months, there have been moments when it seems he doesn't know that much about healthcare and maybe hasn't even read the bills in detail. And there was no real sort of landmark speech as Obama gave when pushing through his legislation, and not much evidence of the kind of cajoling and arm twisting that's required with Republican members of Congress. So it's a huge defeat for him, all the more bitter because it was done at the hands of Senator John McCain, a critic of Trump, and you know they've clashed in the past. But also a terrible defeat for Republicans who spent 7 years almost making it an article of faith, as Obama put it, a central tenet that they would scrap this law, and it really leaves us asking, you know, what can Trump get pushed through? You know, where does he go from here?
You know, a big defeat, but do you think he really loses sleep over these defeats? Because he seems to operate without the criteria that, you know, previous presidents have had to endure.
It's a fair question, and a colleague of mine today, who's just flown into the country, sort of noted that Trump gave a speech this afternoon to police in Long Island, New York, and seemed completely unfazed, you know, as the media was kind of writing his political obituaries yet again and saying what a disaster this was. He just kind of forged ahead, and he made a reference to it dismissively, well, let's just let Obamacare fail and pick up the pieces. So indeed, I don't think the normal rules do apply to him. And in this particular instance, he will do what he did a lot during the campaign. He will blame the professional politicians, the establishment. He'll wash his hands of it and say, look, I tried to get this done. The intransigence of the Republican Party establishment let me down, and sort of rally his populist support in that way, who always regarded him as an insurgent, as an outsider against the Republicans.
Afshin, another story making news in Washington, and this also unprecedented. We haven't seen this before. The president attacks his own Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. Let's listen to how Sessions has responded to those attacks. Let's watch.
It's kind of hurtful, but the President of the United States is a strong leader. He is determined to move this country in the direction he believes it needs to go to make us great again. And he has had a lot of criticisms, and he's steadfastly determined to get his job done, and he wants all of us to do our jobs, and that's what I intend to do.
So, Afshin, what do you think is behind these attacks on the Attorney General? Do you think Sessions' days are numbered? Is he being set up here?
Well, I think Sessions' days are numbered if Jeff Sessions decides to leave. I think what President Trump is doing is, as they say here in the United States, he's jawboning Jeff Sessions. He's baiting him a little bit. I think President Trump never forgave Sessions for recusing himself from the Russia investigation, and he feels that he doesn't like all of this investigation swirling around him. He would like to see the Robert Mueller investigation squelched and Mueller fired, but he doesn't want to do it himself, even though he has the power to do it. So what has been quite striking about this one is how Jeff Sessions is standing his ground and how the conservative establishment is urging Jeff Sessions to stand his ground and not fall for the bait and not fall for the tweets and not to resign. And that seems to be what is happening. And it's worth remembering that Jeff Sessions was one of the earliest conservative supporters of Donald Trump. So treating him in this fashion is particularly despicable to many in the conservative establishment.
Right, and another indication, Afshin, that it doesn't seem like Donald Trump knows how Washington works, because Sessions has supporters in Congress.
Absolutely, and he certainly needs those supporters in Congress, as we've seen from, as David noted, he hasn't passed a single significant piece of legislation in 6 months.
Rustem, let's get on to the relationship with Russia. The United States Congress this week proposed new sanctions against Russia. This is for allegedly meddling in the 2016 election. Russia has already responded by seizing U.S. diplomatic properties and ordering a reduction in the size of the diplomatic staff that the U.S. has in Moscow. Relations have already taken a nosedive. How bad is it now?
Probably in the worst point since the Cold War, since putting Persians into the Western Europe in 1983, probably the worst since that moment. And it doesn't seem it's going to be better anytime soon, since Congress right now basically trying to restrain the president ever from attempts to leave any sanctions against Russia. So it's all ideas of Mr. Trump to make a deal with Russia, to improve relations with Russia, are failing. And that just symbolizes a global trend into approach of the United States towards Russian-American relations. Russia actually was waiting for quite long, trying to give a chance after seizing Russian diplomatic property in territory of the United States and expelling Russian diplomats, didn't retaliate, was thinking, I guess, things could improve under Mr. Trump administration, but it's not going to happen, obviously. And new package of the sanctions is coming along with that. So I mean, we end up being kind of in the lowest point of our relations now.
There is one difference here, though, with this package of sanctions that the Congress is proposing, and that is that the European Union is not on board with these sanctions. They've been criticizing it.
Yeah, because it's hurting European business, especially the idea trying to replace Russia as an energy supplier for Europe with liquid gas from United States is really not very good idea. Economically, it will take very long time to replace Russian pipelines with ability European ports to receive liquid gas from United States as an alternative. So Europe needs Russia in a lot of sense. Germany was a major Russian trading partner for many, many years after collapse of the Soviet Union. And nowadays, Europe economy is really private companies have a lot of problems and a lot of financial losses. And it's not like a principal issue, how that's like about Crimea or something. This is a very, very sleeky, no evidence Russian involvement in fixing American elections. It's like everything is very with some kind of like referral to the secret intelligence information without real proof, like without real facts. Maybe that's not very convincing for Europeans.
Right. And David, when it comes to foreign policy, is this the clearest indication yet from the European Union that as far as the America First policy goes, it's not going to work?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think many leaders in Europe have been alarmed by Trump's inaugural address and setting out this very nationalist America First tone, and would certainly object to this kind of impact vis-a-vis Russia. But I mean, what's also interesting is just the gap between Trump's conduct and pronouncements and actual U.S. policy, because as has now been well chronicled, Trump seems to have warm, friendly relations with Vladimir Putin, and there were conversations at the G20 that overran or were undisclosed, and often expressed admiration for him, some would say rather mysteriously and suspiciously. And yet, actually, US policy towards Russia hasn't changed much at all, even before these sanctions.
Good words,
and now, indeed, now with these sanctions, if anything, it's actually stepping up. And there was some commentary that suggests maybe Trump overplayed his hand, maybe Congress are actually punishing him for being too warm with Putin and punishing Putin as well. And now, of course, Trump faces this dilemma whether to try and veto these sanctions, in which case the suspicions will multiply all over again.
Right. Song, this weekend, a big weekend in China. It is the 90th anniversary of the PLA, the People's Liberation Army. How is that going to be commemorated in China?
I think there will be some celebrations, there will be some discussions, there will be some, I think, new reform measures. And it's important that PLA has been overthrough this process of liberation of China and also in protection of China's national interest. But now I think PLA will be facing a lot of new challenges. One is that the modern kind of war is not only like air or sea or land, but it also involves cyber and many other technologies. I think China, this PLA will have to step up. And from another angle, I think in the last a few years, China's national interest has quickly expanded from previously mainly the mainland China area to the oversea a lot of places. And I think PLA has to adjust itself and need to learn how to protect our national interest in other places.
Okay, that's where we have to leave it. It's been quite a week. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That's it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching.